Fungo here, and I'm making this video, albeit very late, to wrap up my speculations and expectations of the Ashes of Ariandel DLC based on the gameplay trailer and some interviews. I recommend you watch my last video to get a better idea of what my speculations were on the first 2-minute trailer alone, then proceed with this video afterwards. If you haven't seen the gameplay trailer yet, you may want to watch that, or if you're afraid of spoilers, be careful, because there will be spoilers here, so watch at your own discretion. Many cast doubts on my previous speculations regarding this monstrosity being Velka, which is understandable given this new info. This hooded lady comes out of the shadows, declaring this beast by the name of Father. Father is a term used to denote men of Catholic faith or other religions as being a priest or a higher position on the ladder. Many have already pointed out this is Allfather Lloyd, briefly described in Dark Souls lore as, admittedly, it does fit very well. There isn't a whole lot we know about this entity. In fact, the only things we do know are that he is the uncle to Gwyn and that he is the founder of the Way of White, and that's really it. Even his Allfather title is cast doubt on by clerics of Karim, saying it was self-proclaimed. The Way of White is generally a cleric sect that follows Lord Gwyn. It is the first covenant presented to you in Dark Souls, and its mission is to kindle and link all the bonfires, whilst eliminating undead in hunts, which became tradition after Lloyd's undead hunts. Allfather is a term derived from Odin in Norse mythology, which basically means the father of all, or to put it quite simply, the ultimate creator. In monotheistic religions, it would stop there as what we know as just God. So if Lloyd is really the Allfather, he would be a pretty significant deific force to be reckoned with. The Karim cleric's doubt on Lloyd's actual title should definitely be taken into account, as they are members of the Way of White and know the history better than anyone, considering their affiliation to a covenant or religion that should be long lost in the annals of time. So there is an inkling of a chance they could be right. Allfather Lloyd could have been the Pontiff Sullivan of Dark Souls 1. Just not as evil, I would assume. Now, I find this a little bit odd, but some people say it would be quite disappointing to pit Velka, goddess of sin in this light, as just a big ugly brute. But wouldn't you think it would be more disappointing to see the Allfather, or creator of all, the one who established the core gameplay principles the entire series is based off of, as this big ugly brute, as more disappointing? I mean, I'm totally okay with Allfather Lloyd being cast in this light, and I totally think it's okay to paint Velka in this regard as well, but only if the story justifies it. And there are plenty of reasons for how either of them could have ended up in this way. But that argument against Velka can't be okay for Allfather Lloyd and not okay for Velka. It fundamentally doesn't make any sense whatsoever. The sin system between both gods are a lot alike, the only difference being that the Way of White governs unjust online play as seen in Dark Souls 3 with the circlet, while Velka governs unjust single-player play. Because these two entities are so closely related when it comes to a divine law, this story could still be what I speculated, just with Allfather Lloyd in place of Velka. That's not to say Velka won't also be a part of this expansion, that's totally possible too. Besides the hooded nun-like lady referring to him as Father and his supposed or purported establishment of the Way of White Covenant, there is really no other evidence that this monstrosity is Allfather Lloyd. No one has presented anything concrete on this mystical entity as far as I know, yet are still willing to go all in on that loose, circumstantial evidence. But then I realized something. That there is an actual picture of Allfather Lloyd in Dark Souls, and it's etched on the gold coin. Upon close examination of the picture engraved on the coin, any doubts in my mind were cast away as to who this monstrosity really is. As you can see, the body shape, the face, the hair, all very much matches with everything we were teased in the initial trailer. But most importantly, as you can see here, he's grasping something with tiny, skinny arms. And what he's grasping could very well be a cauldron or lord vessel. And looking closer at it, with the way the rim of the bowl actually lines up with his face, he's pretty much face first in that. It's almost like they used the art etched on this coin as a basis for the concept art. Almost too uncanny to be coincidence. But of course, the size of this picture is minuscule. Just look at the size of this coin. That's the actual size of it. Resizing it and making it larger only made things worse for me. My eyes just started to boggle like I was looking at magic eye illustrations for a while. Regardless of what I examined on this coin, it could just be my imagination playing tricks on me, but I doubt it. You saw the similarities too, right? I hope it wasn't all in vain. Another piece of evidence comes from a Japanese IGN interview with Miyazaki translated by fans on Reddit, where he says, "I believe that the themes I created in Dark Souls can only be completed with Dark Souls 3. Therefore, the theme that Dark Souls 3 has, as well as the theme in the DLC, is from the very inception of the Dark Souls franchise." While this could be read any number of ways, I take it as this. He's basically saying if there are any loose ends or unexplored themes, the DLC is my last chance to incorporate those. So this really makes it clear to me that they will be taking characters and lore from the inception of Dark Souls, and Lloyd, or even Velka, fits very well. I'm pretty certain that this mysterious cleric you encounter and fight is a member of the Way of White given her garb, religious appearance, and, well, the fact that she's a cleric. Even though she's using non-traditional magic, she's still a cleric. In the cutscene with her, you may have noticed how the direction focuses on her bare feet, and on her scythe. It's pretty obvious they are trying to say, "Oh boy, it sure looks a lot like Priscilla, right? Get hype, fanboys!" But I don't think she'll be anything other than a spiritual representation of her. I have a good feeling they are trying to let you draw your own wrong conclusions, but are going to turn it all on its head for the ultimate mindfuck. There may be some explanation in the lore as to why she wields a scythe and walks around barefoot, but I still stand by my theory this character will either be Alsana or some previously unknown character. Another reason to support my theory that this character is Alsana is this line from the Japanese IGN interview. "The Snowfields has an innate tie with the DLC. DLC 1 contains a deep lore aspect that has not been explored before in previous expansions." With that specifically said, Alsana was introduced in a previous expansion, and considering the snowy nature of Iliam Lois, it makes sense that the DLC takes place in a snowy world, not only because of the original painted world, but because of her ties to snow, ice, and other frost magic and a devastating flame. These are all themes that are constant throughout Dark Souls 3, but also themes that we catch glimpses of throughout the trailers. It's still completely possible this is Priscilla in a human form, but they'll have a lot of explaining to do. She looks a hell of a lot like Rhea. That's short for diarrhea. But that can't possibly be her, can it? She even looks a little like Shanalat, aka the Emerald Herald. But given her story and attunement, I doubt this could be her. The hooded cleric lady's dialogue doesn't change my opinion much, as it is all basically a long, drawn-out taunt spoken at Allfather Lloyd towards you.
Fret not, Father. We have no need of thy flame. 'Tis only the flame quivering at misguided ash. Please avert thine eyes.
I don't understand why people are working so hard to analyze her dialogue. She's using flame as a metaphor. That's it, a metaphor. It's just a long drawn out taunt. As I mentioned before, she's obviously a cleric, but she has the gift of frost magic, and no one else really possesses that besides Alsana and Priscilla. Another thing worth noting, because this does help with things a little, is that Claire Corbett voices both of them. So if they got her back to voice this character, it'll make things very conflicting. You won't know who the hell this is until that big reveal, if there is one. And here's the thing. Priscilla has a very non-confrontational nature, and the way this character comes out of the darkness with them fighting words, pulling out a scythe and ready to decapitate you makes me feel like this is not her at all. I don't think this lady's personality fits with Alsana either, even though Alsana is born from a fragment of the dark soul of Manus, father of the Abyss, sister to all these evil bitches that cause you hell in Dark Souls 2. She only inherited her father's fears. As such, she found a kingdom with a valiant king, but because he was swallowed up in the chaos, she spends all her time praying, out of fear. Besides, from what I heard, I actually think the voice actress is Lucy Briggs Owen, who voiced female Anri in Sister Adela in Bloodborne, not Claire Corbett. The hooded mistress is likely neither Priscilla or Alsana. Based on this information, my new theory is that this person is someone unknown to us. A completely new person, someone that was briefly mentioned in this item description from the first game. It mentions there being a head bishop, an apostle to Allfather Lloyd. This bishop is the actual guardian of law and caste, who is a great royal of Thoroland. I have to say, I am now very certain this lady is the bishop and apostle to Allfather Lloyd. If Allfather Lloyd and his apostle are, and I'm pretty sure they are, a part of this world, I wouldn't be surprised if it takes place in a location based on Thoroland, which is known for being the home of the Way of White. While Thoroland is not known for being from the north, there's no problem with that being confirmed in this expansion. Seeing as how most of the enemies are wearing northern sets and there are Viking-like dudes, we can't help but assume this does take place in the north, in a painting set in the north. Another thing I probably thought too long about was this phrase in the trailer.
If you are like us, another forlorn soul.
The word forlorn generally means miserable or hopeless, but in the story of Dark Souls, forlorn means those who are lost without a place to claim as home, as he also says in the trailer.
With no place to call your own.
But in Dark Souls 3 is a word to describe the Corvians. The Corvians are crow-like abominations, much like the crow hybrids in the Painted World. Other words used to describe them are wretched and tainted, which we can assume points out their abnormal sprouting of wings and overall adopted features from the Painted World. The Corvians are usually commanded by staff-wielding ones who apparently share tales of the Painted World. This is interesting because before the announcement of the expansion, we gathered this was talking about the Painted World of Ariamis. But now we know they are building on this lore with the Corvians. They are actually referring to the Painted World of Ariandel. When you manage to grab a great scythe from them, its description mentions a mistress of the Painted World and how she is said to wield a great scythe as well, just like the hooded lady we see in the trailers. Of course, these item descriptions could easily allude to the first game's Painted World and Priscilla and be just as correct. These direct ties to the Corvians leads me to believe that we will most likely fight variations of them in the expansion, even though no Corvians appear in what we were shown. Perhaps the Corvians are products of... oh god, no, not again. Oh god, no, not again. God, no, take it away, no more. I'm not looking, eyes closed. I'm not getting into that now. Maybe later, just not now. I should also point out how non-traditional this expansion seems to be. There are quite a few things. You got this vast open environment, which is what this and the second game lacked from the first game. So it's kind of a breath of fresh air. Not to mention, there are these seemingly random cave-ins that you fall through to find yourself back at the same level, my first thought was that this was symbolizing the world falling apart due to the Painted World's real-life destruction. You also have the boss fight at the end, I would assume, where you battle it out with the cleric lady in the first phase. Upon her death, her blood drains to Lloyd's Lord vessel, filled to the brim with flame. Then in the final phase, you battle it out with an enraged Allfather Lloyd. This is very unusual for a Souls game to have two separate bosses, one after another like this. Though this happens in the ending of Dark Souls 2 after the Aldia patch, or Scholar of the First Sin. Then you have this moment here, where it seems like you're battling it out with an NPC, and completely out of nowhere, a giant beast resembling the Great Wolf Sif appears to fuck up your day. I'm sure this was meant to be a big, heart-stopping surprise, but after seeing this, I'm going to be expecting it, so it won't have as much impact, which kinda sucks. It comes with the job, I guess. That's right, a giant wolf that looks a hell of a lot like Sif shows up, and I'm assuming this will be your first boss fight. Well, what is he even doing here? Sif has no reason to be here. Is this more fan service without reason? Besides, the official name of the wolf is Champion's Grey Wolf. Because of that, I don't think this wolf is the Sif, as the Sif is hinted at being the Old Wolf of Farron, the dead leader of the Wolf's Blood Covenant. You must also take a closer examination of the Great Grey Wolf, who has battle wounds covering its face, and also seems much less sophisticated and more feral than Sif. Now, according to a Polygon article written by someone who actually played the expansion to the first boss, which is the wolf boss, the NPC human character dies first, according to his account, and that's when the wolf supposedly shows up, as the second phase of the battle. But that is clearly not what happens in the gameplay trailer. Instead, this seems to happen right after a parry that happens to release a shockwave depicting a wolf. Pause it right here. That's a face! A human face! This could be an image depicting this supposed champion. I could be wrong. Regardless, I've gathered that this is a shield bash skill unique to this specific shield. According to another article writer, the Great Wolf appears when the NPC boss is between 1/4 and 1/2 health. Going off these two accounts, the most likely explanation is that the Great Wolf is a timed appearance once the NPC boss reaches 1/2 health. So if you know what you're doing, you can kill the NPC before the wolf even shows up. And yes, the NPC boss has a name, and that's Champion's Gravetender. I should also mention that according to the interviewer and article writer at Polygon, these witch-like trees do come to life and attack you once you get too close. And when you are further away, since they are stationary, will shoot fireballs at you. So my assumption previously that they won't harm you was a poor one, and I'm sure to be a lot more cautious now, and you should too. The interview also mentioned that this DLC takes place in a painted world, but a different painted world, and you access it by making your way to a certain point in the game, which makes it pretty clear to me that yes, you do access the DLC at the Cathedral of the Deep, yes, it's through the scrap of the painting the prostrating guy hands you, and yes, it takes place within the painted world of Ariandel. That last part was actually confirmed in the interview, so I got that much right so far. Things are looking up for me, finally. I also just recently noticed that the prostrating guy is wearing a red Forlorn set from Dark Souls 2. Now, if this is confirmation that some lore elements from Dark Souls 2 will make its way into the expansion, I don't know, really. The interview with Miyazaki also mentioned that the wolves have a specific AI where they constantly lurk in the distance and only attack in packs. They wait for the opportune time to gank you, leading to a new gameplay experience. Miyazaki also went on to say that this expansion only has 2 boss fights, and we have seen both of them. The first one is the wolf reminiscent of Sif, and the second one is the hooded cleric fight that turns into a fight with presumably Lloyd. That sounds pretty disappointing to me. They outright said the first DLC will be equivalent to about half of what you would expect from a DLC of a Souls game, with the second DLC filling in the other half. You know, after this long wait, that seems like not enough. Now, the amount of weapons, magic, and armor doesn't seem to really justify it. There really isn't that much content added to it either. While the theme and story told between the 2 DLCs will have different stories to tell, they will supposedly be a continuation of each other. In the Japanese IGN interview, Miyazaki said he's going for a more gothic horror approach in the first expansion, and that was misconstrued in another interview where he said both expansions will be gothic horror. I don't really know what's going on. Whereas the second expansion will dig more into the Dark Souls 3 universe. Unfortunately, that's all I have to add, and I hope it pans out to be a fulfilling expansion, albeit kinda short. Before finishing this video up, I should clarify all my new, revised speculations. These are what I'm planning to stick with. If I'm wrong, then oh well, it's still fun in the end, right? So, I actually have 3 pretty major changes to my previous speculations. The monstrosity is Allfather Lloyd, not Velka, but they are both very similar deities, and I wouldn't be surprised if Velka does make an appearance in some way. The hooded mistress could be Alsana, but is most likely the unnamed apostle to Lloyd. I was pretty damn certain it was Alsana, but now? I'm pretty damn sure it's not, especially after reading that one item description. I mean, what was I thinking? Dark Souls 2 is fanfiction. It's not canon. The DLC will take place in a painting inspired by Thurland. As such, we can assume the original painted world was in Thurland, and I'm sure we'll gather evidence to that as well. The following speculations I'm more certain about. The Great Grey Wolf Sif is not Sif, but possibly related in some way. Maybe a brother, sister, something, I don't know, something cool. I hope. If it's some unexplained large wolf, then that would kinda suck. You access the DLC at the Cathedral of the Deep bonfire by touching a remnant of the painting. Not sure if it's gonna activate upon your arrival, or if it's gonna require you to actually beat the boss of the area. The following speculation has been confirmed. The DLC takes place in the painted world of Ariandel. So I got that right. And fortunately, there's still much to learn, and plenty of reasons to remain hyped. Thanks for watching, everyone, and be sure to follow me or like my page for updates. Even consider subscribing for the lore analysis and guides I will produce on the upcoming DLC. These patrons are flippin' amazing, and I really owe a lot to them. I'd like to shout out some new patrons, starting with the elite supporters being King, welcome back man, and Jonathan Ryan. And now my noble supporters being Joshua O'Neill, welcome back, Vosk21, and Demas Bentham Jr. A super special shout out to these amazing patrons for being a big support.
The legendary Chris and Sandre Friesvold, the heroic Tyler Hunter, and the elite Felipe Russo, Apothecary 2, Alex Loop, King, and Jonathan Ryan.
If you haven't seen it already, there's this Souls lore I've done, and I'm proud to announce that Rosaria's Fingers has won the vote for the deep analytical examination I will do. Thanks again for watching this video, it really means a lot to me, and even consider becoming a patron of mine.